This one is very long, actually. This one is actually very long. I hope that I'll be able to do it in one go, but we'll see. Love is strange, said heart to mind, a convoluted thing. That delicate thread connecting heart to heart, that fine red string so easily snapped with a careless word or thought, as we mold and shape our fine ideals from the very heartbreaks which we sought to overcome. For with each chance to start afresh, no, we much prefer the palette of the past, to recreate with fervor the same tragic masterpiece we once vowed to cast aside for good, keeping shadows at arm's length to hope against hope, as anyone would. Dear God, please let this be the last. Let this stand the test of time and expectations, though happily we trade our souls for just a crumb of that bitter-sweet sensation. But what do we know of love? We, the broken, familiar only with love's cruel allure, caught in cycles of dejection, we, the brazen and demure alike, who sought the answer to love's question, all the while insecure. The wandering souls who through their masks see love so obscured. The non-believers in love's beauty, having not known love before, instead befriend her shadow, who captures in her claw the unsuspecting dreamers, who sought acceptance, nothing more. So said the mind. I too have often found myself adrift in the dark uncertainty of thought, struggling to sift and wade the muddy waters of self-loathing and disgrace, understanding well that emptiness was mine to mend and mine to face, but that darkness terrified me, so I ran from place to place in search of something, someone, anything to fill that empty space, and still, no matter how far I searched, no matter how hard I chased, love eluded me still, taunted me. Its tender, kind embrace always just beyond my fingers, just beyond reach of my hand. But each time I grasped and thought, at last, it slipped away like grains of sand, passing cruelly through my fingers without a care for my demands, though I beg and will that warmth to stay. Indifferently, love melts away, and each time the veil was lifted, I could see as plain as day those brilliant colors, just a dream, and what was left was gray. Now lost at sea without direction, I found naught but my own reflection, staring back at me. And if looks could talk, my dear, I'm sure you'd have a lot to say, instead of glaring silently in that scornful, mocking way, as if you think it my fault that we found ourselves astray. Oh yes, dear heart, I too have oft lamented in such ways. Then heart inquired, but dearest mind, what is love anyway? Is it the candle holder, always tasked with keeping place for another, that special other, that their lover strives to chase? Is it the hopeful, hopeless mind, who once believed and chose to spend its time with dreams of destiny, but chose fate in the end? Is it a place to weather storms when souls are put to test? A refuge for the weary heart to stop a while and rest? Is it perhaps the flame of passion that the tender song ignites, or the sweetly cryptic promise made on dark, vinacious nights, evaporated without trace at the arrival of dawn's light? Is it the agony of loneliness which powerfully compels the soul to twist, contort itself in deadly, toxic spells? As we choose to stay quite blind to what the soul already knows, that this is not, has never been, the way that true love grows. And heart exclaimed, "Oh no, dear mind, I know it is not love. When time, our most precious possession, is thrown about without discretion, everything given without question until those days, those darkest days, when we can give no more, to seek shelter in another, but each time find a closed door. And with nowhere left to run or hide, at last we find that we had long ago forgotten where we lost our own heart's key. But anyway, it matters not, for who would love someone like me, someone like me? A heart that's torn and tattered could only ever be a heart that's born to shatter. So who would ever see this heart as anything but tainted and unworthy of a prayer, or concern, or tenderness? For the heart that knows despair learns to stand alone, to stay alive, and turns only to doubt that another could be there, or even give a care about a lifeless, empty shell whose vibrant flame had long burnt out. But mind replied, "My dear, my heart, of course that isn't true. That all your worth, your worthiness equates to what you do, to what you did, to what you've done, or what the world has done to you. For even heaven's praise is worthless, if you don't believe it too. Don't you see that your true worth comes from the mere fact that you're you?" So spoke the heart. "Well then, dear mind, pray tell, what should we do? Can we forgive, release the past, and be free to pursue what love without condition could feel like when it's true? Oh, to be open, to be seen, and to let that light shine through, as seeds we sow burst forth and grow. Could we learn to love anew? And for a time when heart and mind at last stood tall and drew the line, and chose to cut fate's tangled vines, they found themselves alone. For everyone and everything they'd ever known, every unstable foundation on which they tried to build a home, had tumbled, crumbled, fallen away. And the only one left to greet them that day was the mythic soul they'd never cared to know, whose light, though mostly faded, lingered on as a faint glow, for in spite of shadows, spells, and claws, which took a mighty toll, there it was, several times broken, and yet somehow completely whole. On that fine day when heart met soul, they found they shared a common goal of love, of joy, of hope, of light. Defiant of that darkest night, they sang love's praises still, in spite of all they'd known and all they'd seen. They found themselves contented, never lost sight of their dream, yet were free from expectation, for they knew the bitter sting of what fear of isolation and its forced connections bring. How it steers the heart and drives the mind, that fiercest hunger keeps us blind to the deception of the shadow and its chains of shame which bind. For the more we dwell in darkness, dears, the more of it we find. But they found in darkness so much more, something to be cherished, to be treasured, to adore, A light so bright the likes of which they'd never seen before, and it shone despite it all, endured relentless bitter rain. It weathered its fair share of hurt and fear and guilt and pain and tears and disappointments. Yes, indeed, that very same endearing light shone brilliantly, devoid of any shame. Undeterred, it flickered joyfully, all the while still beaming bright, as heart and mind and soul looked on in awe upon the sight. Then all at once soul's laughter leapt above into the air, as it rejoiced and wept and danced and gave a word of thanks and prayer, and tore away its mask, so that at last it stood quite bare. Despite what danger softness posed, the soul chortled once more, exposed, and mind dumbfounded bitterly proposed, what on earth could be funny to you? Having gone through what we all went through, having known the pain I know you knew, having lived that darkest night, how can it make a bit of sense for you to still make light? And the soul that mind had never known spoke tenderly, because we've grown. Grown? Asked mind, and stopped to ponder. And soul replied, well, it's no wonder. For once we bound ourselves in chains and gave others the key, forgoing kindness owed to self by choosing not to see that though time passed we kept ourselves confined in memory. Remembrance far, we picked the scar by wondering, why me? We may never know the answer, dear, but love has set us free. Free to play and breathe, free to receive, be who we're meant to be. Who would have thought that my first love would end up being me?